We begin with big political news here in New York State today with the release of a new Siena College poll. It shows the migrant crisis is really top of mind for a lot of voters, and it gives Governor Kathy Hochul her lowest approval rating ever in the poll. Meanwhile, we're only 11 weeks out from this November's election, with a key race being for Erie County Executive. We'll talk about that in a moment. And we're also on the eve of the first Republican presidential debate. These 8 candidates will be on the stage. Former President Donald Trump, you can see, is not listed. He will not attend tomorrow night. But tonight we are getting a sense of how New Yorkers feel about Mr. Trump's campaign and the criminal charges against him. To help us cover all of that and more, we are joined live tonight by our 2 political analysts, Republican Carl Calabrese and Democrat Jessica Schuster. Great to have both of you here. Appreciate it. I want to start here with the headline came out of this poll today. 82% of New Yorkers saying the recent influx of migrants is a serious problem facing the state. 54% say very serious. And only about a third of New Yorkers approve of how Governor Kathy Hochul has handled this crisis. To be clear, it is more acute in New York City, but it's certainly impacting a lot of the state, including here. Carl, it seems that's taken a toll on the governor's overall approval rating. Is this an opening right now, at least politically, for Republicans in the state?
Oh, no question about it. I think Democrats are just on the wrong side of this issue at every level, at the presidential level, at the gubernatorial level, and even at the county executive level. And I was really surprised by these numbers. As you said, Mike, 82% think it's a serious problem. By double digits, people say that the immigrants who've come to New York over the last 20 years have been more of a burden than a benefit. Those are the words used in the poll. And by double-digit margin, New Yorkers say that we've done enough. Let's stop the migration. Again, this is New York State, one of the bluest, most liberal states in the country. And to get these kind of numbers is striking. I can see this being a major issue this year in the county executive's race. I think the county executive is on the wrong side of this issue. I think probably he and his entire staff, when they go to bed at night and say their prayers, they probably say, please don't let there be any more incidents and arrests between now and Election Day. And I think it's also going to play out in the 4 congressional seats that Republicans picked up in 2022 that Democrats have been salivating over to try to get them back. I think this is going to be a major issue, and it's going to play to the Republican benefit.
Jessica, let me ask you, looking at just Democrats, 48% of them in this poll said that New York should continue to accept migrants and assimilate them, but an equal amount, 48%, said that essentially New York has done enough and we should slow the flow of migrants. Evenly split, 48-48. What do Democratic leaders, in your opinion, need to do to get a handle on this?
Look, I think the first thing Democrats need to do is to address this question honestly. I think the voters have concerns, and rightly so. I mean, we've seen here locally that there have been some issues with crime at the Dingens Hotel in Cheektowaga. And so I think that largely speaking, New York State voters feel the same way as much of the country, which is that this is a federal problem and we need federal guidance. We have seen, local police chiefs all the way to the governor calling on the president to help reform, the work laws, to make this process of asylum seeking a little bit easier, to go a little bit quicker. I think all of that is what everybody wants to see, not just New York State. Ultimately, I think when you dig into the top line numbers, you do see that people are fairly mixed when it comes to how they feel about immigration. And I think that the seriousness is not overblown, but also we need to have a real comprehensive reform that means that people have a process to follow, that it's easy, and that we get these folks to work so they can start contributing to our local economies and assimilate into the culture in a way that is beneficial to all, both the asylum seekers and the residents here.
We'll come back to the impact this may have on the county executive race in a moment. But Carl, first I want to get to this first presidential debate on the GOP side. It's tomorrow night. We mentioned Donald Trump isn't going. The Siena College poll today showed a quarter of Republicans in New York actually agree with the 2 federal indictments against him. People wonder, will the race already be decided by the time you and other Republicans get to vote here in our primary in April? What's your take on the former president's legal problems and the state of that race?
Well, I'm not surprised with the results of Republicans in New York. Republicans in New York are kind of the outliers in the nation when it comes to the Republican base. There's no question that every one of these indictments that have been issued, Donald Trump's numbers nationwide have gone up within the Republican base. And so, if it's part of the strategy of the Democrats to drive Donald Trump's nomination to face him in 2024, indicting him is working right now. I mean, that could change because with independents, they look at it differently than Republicans. Republicans look at it as the DOJ, the FBI have all been politicized and weaponized, and this is all corruption. Independents don't see it that way. The majority of independents think that the indictments are legitimate and deserving. And so that could be a real problem for Donald Trump in a general election. It'll be interesting to see how these people on the debates stage Thursday night play this. Will they bring up the electability issue to see if they can make some ground up on Trump's huge lead right now?
Jess, Carl mentioned just a moment ago the Erie County Executives race. You wonder how much of a factor the migrant issue may now become in that. You mentioned the 2 asylum seekers facing criminal charges here locally. How do you think Mark Poloncarz's campaign is going to handle that? And how are you sizing up the Republican candidate right now?
Well, look, I think there's probably many Democrats in Erie County who wish maybe the county executive did not sort of insert himself in this debate. As I said earlier, it really is a federal issue that needs reform at that level. However, I think that, the county executive's race is one that is a long-standing incumbent with a record to run on, with virtually name recognition that's nearly 100%. And I think that one of the things that I took from the Siena poll was that folks mostly think that their local politicians are doing okay when it comes to the immigration crisis. So, I think Mark Poloncarz is a formidable opponent. I think he will run a good campaign. I think he has a significant fundraising edge over his Republican challenger. And I think all of those things bode really well for the Poloncarz team going into the fall.
I've only got a minute left. I'm going to sneak a quick question to each of you here. Carl, Chrissy Casilio is the Republican candidate here. Seems like a lot of Republicans said they didn't want to get in this race, bigger name Republican candidates. How confident are you in this race in November?
Well, it's going to be an uphill race. I agree with Jess that Mark Poloncarz is an incumbent. That always gives you an advantage. He's got a huge fundraising advantage, but I think she's got 3 big issues that if she can raise the money, she can exploit them. This migrant crisis is one. The COVID handling by the county executive, which I thought was very heavy-handed, that can be summed up in a few words: we will shut you down. And the handling of the blizzard. I think those are going to be the 3 issues. Again, if she can raise the money and exploit those issues, this could be an interesting race.
Finally, Jess, the other thing that stuck out to me in this poll today, it looked at Democrats and how they feel about Joe Biden running for re-election. About half of them said renominate him, half of them said somebody else, but there really isn't anybody else. No one does well in this poll. Any concern about enthusiasm for Joe Biden?
Not at all. I think you hit the nail on the head, Michael. I think that if you put somebody else up against Joe Biden, the president, who has a sound record, would still command a majority of the vote, and that is why he'll likely be successful in his re-election campaign.
You both snuck in quick answers at the end. Republican Carl Calabrese and Democrat Jessica Schuster. We got this poll today, and I thought, man, there's a lot to discuss on the political front. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you, Michael.